Hey everyone, Carl here with Literate Lessons, bringing you another deep dive this week. This week we're going to talk about some of the meta shifts that have been happening in the couple weeks between events. This downtime is always fun to kind of get into the nitty-gritty on teams and see what shifts have been happening, what changes are being made, and things like that. But before we get started on all that, make sure to do all that fun YouTube stuff for me. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications so you're up to date whenever we put out a video. Leave a comment down below if there's any archetype that I missed that you want to talk about. You can easily either hit me up on the comments down here or come join the Discord and talk to me there. So let's just get right into this. First team I want to talk about is unfortunately probably one of the weaker teams that we've seen come out of these big events. And that's the Calirex Ice Palkia teams. Overall, these teams have started to shift into a less weakness policy team and more of just like a hard trick room team. Foregoing the weakness policy on Calirex Ice, I believe, is probably the correct move. Zacian's very popular, so you want to make sure you live a hit rather than try and use Incineroar and finagle your way into getting an advantage. These Berry sets are really cool. You're really bulky. You get access to Swords Dance this way now instead of having to run like another move or protect or whatnot, because you know that you're going to be able to tank one Behemoth Blade most of the time, outside of the random +3 Zacians or whatever. But overall, the goal plan for this team now is to set up Trick Room with either Palkia, Calirex Ice, or Porygon 2. This slot here can change into like Dusclops depending on how you're wanting to run your team. Dusclops is usually on the weakness policy versions of this team. You could also like look into other Trick Room setters. Bronzong's is something that's become very popular here lately, which we'll get to in a minute. They also usually carry at least one redirector now. Amoonguss is the current popular one, mainly due to the fact that you have access to like Pollen Puff and Spore. Now granted, this does create a non-bow with your Tapu Fini, but Indeedee Female also creates a non-bow with your Tapu Fini, so it's a lose-lose situation. So I think having Amoonguss be the one that lets you keep your terrain is probably the lesser of two evils at this point. Incineroar's very standard. Darkest Lariat, Throat Chop, whatever dark move you want, Flare Blitz, Fake Out, Parting Shot, Shuka Berry. There's not a whole lot to say about Incineroar right now. We'll talk about Incineroar more in depth as we get to the end here. The biggest change on these teams is the loss of the second redirector and the addition of the support Tapu Fini with Heal Pulse. This one, I believe this exact 6 is the ripoff rental from, I want to say it's from either Taiwan or Liverpool, and I can't remember which one. But this Tapu Fini is mainly here to kind of keep us healthy, use Nature's Madness to kind of help us break through some of the Pokemon that are a little bit harder for Calirex Ice and Palkia to get through. And then we just have Stab Moonblast for those pesky Dark types and Dragon types, whatever we need to hit. Palkia, same as ever, Hydro Pump, Earth Power, Spatial Rend, do real good damage. Trick Room works as max guard when you're max, so it doesn't matter. So the reason this team is first and obviously last on my list is you have a terrible Rinya Sun matchup. The team does not do well into Charizard at all. You have Palkia that's 4 times resisted, but like if you're having to set up Trick Room with your Palkia on the field, you're in trouble to begin with. So you're really reliant on like Amoonguss redirecting a hit, which then just eats the Wildfire, and then Palkia gets a taunt or gets faked out or something. So you feel really pressured when you're facing down the Rinya Sun team. Unfortunately, this team also really struggles against the new Calyrex Shadow Zacian teams. That has a very strong defensive core. We'll talk about that more in depth here in a minute. But all the pivoting that team can do can be problematic when you're trying to pick up KOs fast and try to whittle through your opponent's team. Next up on my list is an adaptation we haven't seen or heard from in a while. If you were around for the start of Series 12, you may remember Joyo X9's the Aveldon team. he tried really hard to make it work, was playing like Tapu Koko and Venusaur and some fun stuff together. This is the latest variation, I would say, of it. So what the idea here is we use Venusaur and Regieleki to kind of just be our fast, speedy stuff. And then Yveltal and Groudon are both very bulky and very annoying. And then Bronzong and Cineroar are kind of like our support mons here. Venusaur obviously is really, really good. You would think Venusaur would be bad with all the Rinya Sun running around, but the fact that you can outspeed Zard, they're not really running Lumberry anymore, so your sleep powders are really safe into that. You're carrying the Focus Sash, so you're guaranteed to take at least one hit, and then when you do get to safely max this thing, it can just destroy people. Into opposing Kyogre teams, the Regieleki Venusaur G-Max duo can just tear through opponents. You would think that this team would be weak to Calirex Ice Palkia, but the combination of Groudon, Yveltal, and Bronzong is just really, really strong in that squad. You literally leave Venusaur and Regieleki at home and just play these four, and can tear through their team. Bronzong being the biggest offender here. This is the coolest thing about the squad, I feel like. Being access to like reversing Trick Room, Ally Switch if you want that, Iron Defense to bulk up in front of a Calirex Ice or a Zacian or whatever ails you, and then Body Press to just pound it all the way. What's cool about Bronzong on this squad is if you can get a couple Max Quakes off with either Venusaur or Groudon, this thing becomes an unkillable monster in the right hands. Other things you can be doing with this, besides Ally Switch, you have access to like Gyro Ball. You have access to Light Screen and Reflect if that screens is something more your speed. I have seen crazy strats with Skill Swap putting Levitate on like my Incineroar or my Regieleki or my Venusaur if that's what needs to happen for like Trick Room things. So it's a lot of cool like weird synergies with Skill Swap and Bronzong. Again, another Incineroar, this time being Safety Goggles with Taunt. I think this is more to stop opposing Trick Room, especially into the opposing Calyrex Ice teams playing Amoonguss. Like, this is how you lose the games most of the time against Calyrex Ice Palkia is Amoonguss. So having something that's guaranteed to beat it is always a win. Yveltal does Yveltal things, it's very standard AV set, and then Groudon is opposite of what we're used to seeing. It's no longer the super bulky kind of sit there and take damage Pokemon. This is more of an offensive variant with Sword Stance that we are akin to seeing in Series 8 and 10 and 11. I don't expect this to become the norm. In fact, I would almost see like Regieleki going to like Magnet, Yveltal going to Life Orb, but a Groudon ended up being Assault Vest as the teams kind of develop. But overall, I like the squad a lot. This was a 4th place team out of Liverpool. Didn't really see it at Taiwan. I think I've seen multiple variants of something with like this in the Frankfurt Road to VR thing, and then I expect this to pop up a lot at the EU IC too. I think this is probably the most underexplored archetype of the 5 that we're talking about today, and this one has probably the most potential to change over time. Next up, an oldie but a goodie, Kyogre Screens. We're used to seeing this combo of Zapdos, Rillaboom, and Incineroar kind of try to take over games with Kyogre and Zacian and with Grimmsnarl as support. We've kind of adjusted from Kyogre Rillaboom to Kyogre Ferrothorn. I think having access to something that's good in Trick Room is going to benefit this team a ton, especially with seeing like Calyrex Ice Palkia being popular. I've seen like crazy Trick Room teams coming along, and I think having access to Ferrothorn is going to be really, really important. But the main archetype damage here is like Grimmsnarl Zapdos, Grimmsnarl Kyogre, Incineroar Zapdos, Incineroar Kyogre, Incineroar Zacian. You get the idea. Support Pokemon plus damage output. Use your support Pokemon effectively to get your damaging Pokemon into a good position. If your opponent's lead is super passive, use Zapdos Kyogre to kind of just take over the game. Pretty simple stuff. Zapdos is super standard. 3 damaging moves in a Life Orb. We have Heat Wave to deal with opposing Zacian because we don't have a good way of doing that outside of using Kyogre. Speaking on Kyogre, Kyogre's Assault Vest. This could be any item that's left over. I've seen Calm Mind leftover sets. I've seen just standard Mystic Water sets. I think Assault Vest right now, though, is the current trend, becoming a bulky boy in front of opposing Zapdos, opposing Ferrothorn, opposing Regieleki, whatever floats your boat is much more important than making sure that your water spouts are 100% damaging OHKOing Pokemon all the time. You could achieve this goal by just hitting your moves and doing consistent damage. Overall, though, this team is probably the most boiled down, solidified version of the squad. I don't expect this team to adapt too terribly much more. Maybe Regieleki over the Zapdos, maybe, but I feel like this Screens Kyogre team has hit its ceiling, and it's not gonna go anywhere else anytime soon. It just wouldn't be a meta video if we didn't talk about Rinya Sun. There's been a few adjustments on Rinya Sun since we last talked about it. A lot of the Rinya Sun teams have dropped Heavy Slam and are now favoring Shadow Claw. The big change here is Shadow Claw gives you access to Max Phantasm when you Dynamax Groudon. Notably, this is good into the opposing Cali Shadow teams, which can give you headaches. This is also really good into like opposing Intimidate because it gives your opponent's team stat drops. So tit for tat, one for another, eye for an eye, whatever you want to call it. -1 defense, -1 attack. It's going to be the same damage calc every time. That's just usually, I say same, it's not going to be exact. Usually there's a little bit of variance, but nothing huge like a +1 versus a -1 would be. Again, the rest of this team stays fairly standard. You don't see a whole lot of crazy stuff right now. I've been seeing people varying from the Light Clay Screens Grimmsnarl into like Fake Out Babiri Berry for the mirror. And then you're having like Burning Jealousy, because the best way that you deal with opposing Grimmsnarl on Rinya Sun is literally just bringing out Zacian and bopping it. So having access to some cheeky stuff like that for the mirror is really, really good. Also lets you burn opposing Groudon, which is good. The other big thing that's starting to shift again is Charizard. I feel like this is the most fluid Pokemon on the team, whereas Grimmsnarl is probably the weakest. Charizard is going to probably change the most over time. And it's going to come down to what you expect the meta to be. So if you expect a lot of Rinya Sun, play the Charty Berry. Nothing's wrong with Charty Berry, Ancient Power, Protect Charizard. Like, this is super standard. You don't have to worry too much about what you're going to be doing a lot of the time. You're going to deal good damage still. It'll be fine. However, as the format has grown, I've kind of noticed that you don't really have to worry about that stuff too terribly much. A lot of the time, you just blow stuff up anyway because you're a Charizard in the sun, and if they're gonna fight you over weather, that's when you don't Dynamax it and you just pivot out into Gastrodon or whatever. So running double fire move and flying stab, and I like running Helping Hand on my Charizards, and it's mainly just due to the best of 3 nature of my formats that I like. But you can catch a lot of people off guard with a Helping Hand Precipice Blades, or a Helping Hand Max Quake, or a Helping Hand Sacred Sword to beat up something. It comes in handy, and you're not protecting this thing outside of Dynamax anyway because it's usually almost dead. You've already set up a couple airstreams. You're going to outspeed it and everything anyway, so it's fine. The last slot that could probably change a little bit here is Gastrodon. I've seen people kind of migrating to Icy Wind over Ice Beam. It's a personal preference thing. Incineroar, super duper standard against Shuka Berry. Throat Chop, Fake Out, Parting Shot, Flare Blitz is kind of the norm. Last team I want to talk about, and probably the most improved team I would say over the past 2 weeks, is this Calyrex Shadow Zacian Thunderous team. This gives Rinya Sun so many headaches, just with this defensive power that you get from all these potential pivots and intimidates and helping hands and fake outs and whatnot. there's a lot going on with this squad that you can really utilize really well. So the idea here is you're super offensive with Calyrex Shadow, Zacian, Thundurus, and then Blastoise, Rillaboom, Incineroar are kind of like your pivot trio. You usually bring at least 2 of these 4, and then your Zacian, Calyrex Shadow, Thundurus, and at least 2 of these guys. And you kind of play this pivoty game going back and forth and cycling Intimidates and Fake Outs and trying to get yourself into a good Dynamax position. And then you click the button and you pop off and you just go nuts. You have a very good Rinya Sun matchup. Thundurus and Blastoise both see to that. Calyrex Shadow helps against that team really well too. One of the cool adaptations that we've seen away from like Psyshock is now Energy Ball or Leaf Storm. So you can Dynamax this thing and just blow somebody up, especially like Groudons and Kyogres, Gastrodons, all that stuff. Sacred Sword, standard Zacian stuff. A lot of people have started dropping Play Rough now for Substitute again, and I think that's more just like best of 3 mind games going on, but overall, I think the standard 3-attack Zacian is fine. I do want to point out, though, start speed creeping your Zacians. Jolly Zacian is the new standard, and wouldn't be caught dead if I'm at least not 203 or more on my Zacians now. You still run almost enough attack to make it matter, but I wouldn't be caught dead without at least 203 speed. Would definitely start speed creeping your Zacians more and more. But overall, this is probably I would if there was a most improved team of the year, this would probably get it. We saw a little bit of an inkling of this duo pop up at Salt Lake City. It popped up at Liverpool, but it kind of just couldn't get its ground going. And it popped up again at the Victory Road to Frankfurt and just took off. It was great. It was very, very powerful. The winning team, I believe, had Regieleki in this slot over Thundurus, which helps you obviously in the mirror. It helps your speed control because that's kind of where you lack. Outside of max airstream on Thundurus, you have no good way to outspeed your opponent. So you're really reliant on your fake outs here to kind of get the speed advantage on your side. But I would definitely be on the lookout for this team in the EUIC. Definitely have a plan for Calyrex Shadow and Thundurus. Definitely have a plan for Blastoise if that's something you need. I've been playing a ton with it. This thing is really annoying and really hard to get rid of if you're not prepared to do it. It gets to play both support and Dynamax option at the same time. So it's super duper flexible and it's super duper cool. So now that we've kind of run down through all of this, what do I think of all these teams? Well, outside of the fact they all play Incineroar, they're all really good, I guess. Of the 5, I don't see Calirex Ice Palkia making it through this event. I mentioned in my video on Sunday that if it doesn't do well here, I don't expect people to pick it up anymore. I expect this kind of just to fade away and disappear. Outside of that, these top 3 Kyogre screens, Rinya Sun, Calyrex, Zacian-Thundy things, these 3 will always be here. I don't expect these to go anywhere anytime soon. They're all really powerful in the right hands. The matchups between these 3 are going to be 50-50, 60-40 at best. Yveldon might be able to make a deep run at an event or 2, but I think that it's going to struggle against the Calyrex Zacian teams a lot. Even though you do have Yveltal, because this team also struggles with the speed control, and most of this team outspeeds most of this team. So take with that what you will. My pick again to win the whole EUIC is this Calyrex Zacian-Thundy team. So definitely rooting for this one to win the event overall. And that's all I got this week. I want to thank everyone for hanging out and listening to me ramble about this whole slew of teams here and how the meta has shifted. I kind of glazed over this whole Incineroar thing because I want to save that for a future deep dive, and I think it's going to be super duper fun. It'd be fun to revisit Incineroar 100 episodes later, knowing what I know now about VGC and how sets work and team building and all that. But if you want to see other topics for deep dives, leave a comment down below. Again, maybe comment your favorite team, your favorite archetype that I didn't get to cover here, why it's good, why it's bad, and stuff like that. Let's have a discussion. I really enjoyed a lot of the comments we've been getting here lately, and I would love to keep that up. And if YouTube comments aren't your thing, go check out the Discord. Link is in the description down below. We'll gladly talk team building there. And I want to thank you all for hanging out, and we will see you all next week. Bye, everyone.